Hello, it's me, Chaytel Solver, and I want to talk to you for a moment about issuing a correction to something that I previously stated a long time ago on an episode of K-Plays. I want to talk to you for a moment about, I believe it's an episode of Dark Souls 3, where I mentioned the Marvel Comics character Razorback, a superhero that I said was, I believe in my own words, the lamest comic book hero ever. And I would like to clarify that. Razorback dresses like a giant boar, if a giant boar was colorblind. But his costume isn't what makes him lame, per se. His powers are what make him incredibly lame. Razorback has the power to... okay, first of all, if you touch the little mohawk on his goofy pig hat, it electrocutes you. That's not his superpower. That's just a thing that he did because he realized he didn't have any useful superpowers. His superpower was originally the ability to drive any truck. Which, I mean, I know what you're thinking. Yes, that's incredibly stupid. But it comes with all kinds of problems, too, when you think about, like, what happens if, like, he could drive any truck, even a truck that was, like, alien, or as long as it qualified as a truck, he should be able to drive it by extension of thinking about this. So that means if he was driving one of those, I'm not car person, what are they, hatchback trucks that have the cover on the back that makes them into a van, he couldn't drive that. He wouldn't be able to drive that. That would, if like the supervillain tied him up in that and started pushing it down a hill, he would not be able to get control of it. It's not a truck. I mean, presumably he can drive other vehicles, but specifically, originally, as it was written, it was any truck. But if the wind blew really hard and then knocked the cover off and it became a truck, suddenly he would just grab the wheel and steer it to safety. And that is probably the only scenario that I can think of where he could do anything remotely heroic with that superpower. Later on, it became the ability to drive any vehicle, including like alien spacecraft or what have you. Doesn't matter what it is, he can drive it, even if he has no idea what it is or how it works. And it's a mutant power because every dumb, nonsensical power is always a mutant power, or he got bit by a radioactive truck. It's your two options: bit by a radioactive themed thing or mutant superpower in Marvel. That's how it works. It has always been. That's how it will always be. And I know what you're thinking. Yes, we already have people who can drive stick shift, and they are bizarre, inhuman entities, but his power extended beyond that. However, it's still the lamest, dumbest shit imaginable. Who gives a crap if you can drive any vehicle? How often in superheroics would that come up? It's lame. It's pointless. What kind of superpower is that? I mean, yes, not everybody can be, say, Wolverine and have a superpower that is constantly very helpful, i.e., not dying. But there has to be a point where you consider if this will ever come up in actual superheroics. And he made a goofy boar hat that electrocutes people who touch him from behind, and that's just an invention that's a better superpower than the power that he already has. But this is all moot because he's not the lamest superhero in comic book history. I encountered a superhero who was so much vastly lamer than him that I'm almost speechless just thinking about it. So I want to issue an apology to Razorback here and now. You are not the lamest superhero ever. That honor goes to a character called the Red Bee, who is a guy who dresses like a... just look at him. I mean, he looks like a fantasy version of a pirate, maybe? He has no superpowers. I mean, realistically, he has a fucking gun. That's his only superpower. I mean, guns were superpowers once upon a time. Just look at the Shadow or Phantom. But his actual claim to fame is he has a trained bee who hides inside his belt buckle, and he can release this bee, stealthily, surreptitiously release a bee, and this bee is trained to sting his target. This bee doesn't release like an amazing neurotoxin. It is a regular bee. It stings them and then presumably dies because it is a bee. So he has the one, as far as I can tell. He has a bee living in his belt buckle. And once he uses it, it is depleted. It's gone. That's it. After that, you better hope that bee somehow incapacitated you, because his only other option is to just shoot you with his fucking gun. This is the lamest superhero I've ever seen. There are lame superheroes. There are superheroes outside of, like, traditional comics media, like characters who are meant to be mascots for people with disabilities, like a superhero who's diabetic. And, I mean, that is lame, but it's not the same concept. It's meant to be empowering to people who are disenfranchised in some way, and isn't meant to be a superhero power fantasy for the average person like the Red Bee is. This was a real character that was really in comics. I mean, yeah, like, the diabetic superhero concept is lame, sure. Like, your weakness is pie, I understand. Your superpower is you have a disability, and that's not very cool. But again, it's a different league. This is the real thing, is this asshole dressed like a pirate with a bee in his belt buckle. That is his superpower, is he trained a bee to sting someone. And every single villain that he went up against, he still managed to thwart, because his villains were always like a thug, a mafia goon. You know, it wasn't anybody, like, this guy doesn't take on, you know, like, Darkseid or Galactus or some crap like that. He's fighting like a purse snatcher. And what happens is they'll pull a gun on him, and he'll say, okay, you've got me, and he'll raise his hands or whatever, or be handcuffed by the bad guy, and then the bee will come out of his belt buckle, which will flop open, and anybody would be able to see this, first of all, because it's a big belt buckle. He has this ridiculous belt buckle. Just look at this fucking thing. No one can miss that it's opening up, and a bee, which is a rather noisy creature if it's near you, is coming out of this. It comes out, and it stings them on the hand, and then they say, ow, a bee stung me, and they drop their gun. And then he, like, breaks free or just puts his hands down and uppercuts them or something and knocks them out. And that was the solution every damn time from what I found in his comic. He always did this. Just released a bee stung the guy got punched. Kudos to him for not shooting them with his gun, which is the only threatening thing he actually has. But it's just so unbelievably lame. Who in the world thought... I mean, it's 1940. We hadn't invented creativity yet, apparently. Or maybe we had, and this was the end result, which is kind of scary when you think about it. But this is your guy. This is a guy. He has a bee, and that's his whole superpower. And that makes him the lamest superhero in all of comicsdom. I'm so sorry, Razorback. You are iconic compared to this dude. All it takes. Bad guy's got an EpiPen. He's thwarted. He's done. That's it. It's over. You're done. Modern medicine has defeated you. The only person you threaten is an extremely allergic individual. And I'm not a supervillain. I know that's something a supervillain would say. You're just going to have to take my word for it. But not being a supervillain, I want to beat this guy up on principle for how incredibly stupid this is. But that's neither here nor there. Red Bee, the lamest superhero of all time. I would be flabbergasted to ever find a character this pathetic in another comic.